All right, for more on this, let's speak to the spokesperson for the JG Zuma Foundation, Mr. Mzwanele Manyi. A great pleasure having you in studio, so thank you for being with us.
Good evening, Flo, and good evening to your viewers.
All right, let's talk then. I mean, why this action now at this particular point? And do you truly believe, that, the Chief Justice could be, in any way taken up on how he made this particular decision and how he came to his decision?
Yeah, well, look, the question of why now, it's a legal question. And I'm sure if you talk to your colleagues in the legal profession, they'll tell you that if it's a declaratory order which you are seeking, as long as it's premised on either a point of legality, a principle of legality, or rationality, then the time does not count. Yeah. But all those arguments will be made in court. But we think, it's almost like an example, it's not applicable, but just to make the point that if somebody got raped 20 years ago, it doesn't stop that person raising the issue now. Exactly, yeah. So that's the position.
All right. Yeah. Now, you have great issue with the equality provision within the Constitution. What aspect of it has been problematic, and where do you feel that the President deviated from that equality clause that you have mentioned in particular? Yeah,
look, there are two clauses. It's the one of equality and the one that talks to gender parity as well. Yeah, so all we are saying is that President must... he may very well be correct in whatever he has done. All we are saying is that take us into your confidence, show us that the decisions you've taken is a rational decision. That is the issue that we're dealing with here. We're not worried about anything else, because we are arguing that the process that was ensued, that took a week, the process that was ensued, that was presided over by luminaries. You had judges, you had advocates, you had attorneys, you had members of parliament. This is a very esteemed panel that was dealing with this matter over a period. And they had all kinds of objective measures to make that decision. Now, they've made that decision and they recommend that take this name. Yeah. And you decide to take another name. And it so turns out that the name that you've just taken is the worst performer, elsewhere.
Well, based on what? Why is he the worst performer?
Well, what is good about this process is that both Mr. Ramaphosa and the JSC are going to be forced by the process now to submit their record of decisions. Right. In there, some of the information that is already public, that already, Justice Zondo was the worst performer in there. It's almost like what you have, Flo. It's a situation of, I made this example elsewhere, that here you are, faced with 5 truck drivers that you must appoint one, and you decide to take the one that has been hitting all the poles as he was reversing, as to why do you do this? Why do you take the worst performer and you appoint? So we're sitting here with a situation where this has got all the elements, all the hallmarks of a quid pro quo, because you have a situation here where after Judge Zondo has been appointed, quite a few things happened that are quite absurd. One of them is that Justice Zondo now decides, you can imagine the whole Chief Justice decides to dabble into politics and starts to comment about the elections of the ANC in Nasrec in 2017. And then he says the election of Ramaphosa was the best thing since a slice of bread. Where does he feature into these things? Why all of a sudden Ramaphosa is getting praises?
But lastly, Mr. Manyi, okay.
Before
make this, that last point,
Also, 2 quick other points. Also, you have a situation here where the Western Cape High Court made some scathing remarks about Ramaphosa's suspension of Mkhwebane. Scathing. There's some choice words when they declared his decision as unlawful and all of that. Guess who turned it around in the favor of Ramaphosa? It's the office of Zondo. Yeah. So all these things we say, man, this is like you scratch my back, I scratch your back.
Wasn't the former President Jacob Zuma, who you represent, accused of the same thing, of elevating people that were, close to him, that were linked to him? Is it not, a similar situation in this case?
No. Here we're talking about a simple thing of a constitutionally governed process, not talking about some deployment stuff and all of that. We're talking about a constitutionally regulated process. Section 174 of the Constitution is very clear about what needs to happen. In fact, one of the things that were challenging is even the panel that gave these names to the JSC was saying even that panel is an extra constitutional process, is something over and above what the Constitution provides for. Why did that happen? Which part of the Constitution gave Mr. Ramaphosa latitude to come and bring in his friends to come and decide who must be interviewed by the JSC? That process on its own is unlawful, and in fact it's one of the prayers that we have, that even that panel must be declared an unlawful panel.
All right, and then, when we're talking about all of this, I mean, does it really matter? I mean, I know that you're saying that the Chief Justice must dispel, the suspicion that, he was being rewarded. But let's talk about the fact that, does it even matter at the end of the day? Because at the end of the day, the Chief Justice serves, at the behest of the President makes that decision. He has the final say, regardless of, you mentioned all the people, the stakeholders in the committee that, suggested somebody else. But does it matter at the end of the day? Because it's the President's decision. The President decides.
That whole question misses the point on a number of fronts. The first front where the question misses the point, firstly, we're in a constitutional democracy, not dictatorship. You don't do as you like. When the President exercises his power, he has a duty and an obligation to exercise that power within the constraints of rationality. You don't do as you like. Now,
who's to say he wasn't rational in making the decision?
This is what he must. This is the point he must prove, because here you, as I've pointed out earlier, you have a very rational process that he decided to chuck out of the window and just decide on his own. So we are saying part of consulting with the JSC has to be in good faith. Was that consultation in good faith in the first place? If after all of this work, after the whole week of interviewing, you decide that, nonsense, I'm going to take your number last, and all of that. So he must show cause that his decision was not some procure decision, was not just scratch my back, I scratch your back decision, must show that this decision is lawful. The last thing that we want in this country is to have an unlawfully appointed Chief Justice.
Yeah, and there's always been this sort of narrative, and I suppose it was even the days of the Zondo Commission that there's something obviously quite personal, and you can't deny that, because even the former president himself said that there's a history between himself and Zondo. Might this not come across as some sort of vexatious sort of action between the two? We don't know what that particular history is, but may it come across as being rather vexatious?
No. Courts have ruled on this, by the way, that we might even have an issue. The fact that we have an issue does not stop my right from taking it to court and all of that. So there's a case law on this matter, so that issue does not even arise. You can't decide that you and I have got some history of sorts, and because of that history, I have no duty to take you to before the court. No, that is a non-issue.
All right. So, what is the end goal then of the foundation? You've spoken about records of proceedings and the president's decision, and as I say again, dispelling the suspicion that the Chief Justice was being rewarded somehow. What do you think will come out of this particular process that you want to happen, and how exactly would it take place?
Yeah. No. Look, the first thing that we want is less about Zondo. It's more about the exercise of power by the president. That's really the issue. Did the president exercise his power rationally? What must happen? A test. This power must pass the test whether the manner it was used, was it used to fulfill the purpose that power was given for? Or was this power now all of a sudden abused for all kinds of nefarious reasons?
That might not be a difficult test. I mean, given the fact that the Chief Justice has a lot of experience, there's many reasons as to why you can say you chose this particular person.
Well, if you have 20 people, luminaries, that have decided that out of the people that were there, this one is number last, you'd be very hard-pressed to show why all of them are wrong. Who did he consult outside that JSC that decided that JSC is talking nonsense? All of those judges, all of those advocates, all of those members of parliament, all of those attorneys, they're talking absolute nonsense. He is the right person. The president must show that decision why is that decision rational. So we sit here, we say that decision was not only irrational, but also flouted the gender requirement. This thing of gender is not a nice to have in the appointment of the judicial officers. It's not a nice, it's regulated in the Constitution that it has to be a factor to be considered. Here you have a woman who, not because she was a woman, helped that she was a woman, but that's not the issue. Here we have a woman who has ticked all the boxes, does not need any favors.
Who is deputy? I mean, it's not as though she was thrown into the wilderness.
No.
Yeah.
It was gunning for the #1 position, this woman. Why do you decide that you mustn't have ANC tendencies of thinking women can lead the country? So why is it that we have a situation where this woman could not be appointed as Chief Justice when she ticked all the boxes objectively so? So why not? So therefore, that decision we think is irrational, we think it's unlawful, we think it should be set aside. All
right, Mr. Mzwanele Manyi, representing the Jacob Zuma Foundation this evening. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Pleasure to see you as always.